Thanks for joining us for another Tantrum House crowdfunding conniption. Today we'll be sharing a look at the new board game in the role-player universe, Dawn of Ulos from Thunderworks Games.
And as always, we want to make sure that you're aware that our crowdfunded videos are sponsored in part by our own Kickstarter backers, as well as by the creators of this game. Thanks for joining us at Tantrum House Studio 3. I'm Will Meadows.
And I'm Sara Meadows, and in this episode we'll be taking a look at Dawn of Ulos from designers Jason Lenz, and it features art from Diego Sa.
This is a 1 to 5 player hand management game where you will act as God from the role-player universe and will influence the factions that are gaining territory and warring with neighboring tribes. Now we're looking at a prototype copy today, so we'll only be giving you a look at the game and how it's played. We're not going to be sharing any opinions in this video, but we want to help you make an informed decision when it comes to becoming a backer.
To set up the game, construct the modular map and select 5 factions to play with.
Give each player their God card, cash, and 3 tiles, and then you're ready to begin.
On your turn, you will first play a tile anywhere that matches the terrain. On your first turn, you'll need to make sure to place near a rift tile.
When you place a tile and it creates the matching shape of a faction base, you must play it and you'll receive a faction bonus card for doing so.
The faction is no longer lost and it moves up on the track. Any new tiles that have their preferred type of terrain that are added later in the game will cause them to become more powerful as they move further up the track.
Next, you may either pay to purchase up to 3 faction cards. Their price is determined by the faction's strength.
Or you may spend cards to take the action and gain the spoils. Then you draw back up to 3 tiles and it's the next player's turn.
If you place a tile to connect 2 different factions, you will create a conflict, and only one faction will come out on top.
Players will all have the option to contribute cards from their hand to influence the battle.
The faction with the most strength will absorb the new territory, and the losing faction will become lost and is removed from the board.
Play continues until the tiles are all gone or 2 factions have gained legendary status on the track.
Points equal to the faction's strength are awarded for each card left in your hand, and the player with the most points wins.
Dawn of Ulos is in that role-player universe, so you may be familiar with several of those factions as you'll see them in other games, but we are removed from being the factions, and we are now the gods who are overlooking what is happening between them, and you will be influencing them. So instead of taking on the role as a faction and doing area control, you are now gods influencing them, and whatever cards end up in your hand at the end of the game is how you're going to win.
Now you do have a direct influence on that because the tiles that you'll be placing each turn will expand the territory of each of the different factions. You'll be choosing where to place those on the board, whether or not to connect to others and take other factions out, or to just expand your own area and cover certain areas of the board.
Yeah, and so on your turn, you'll have those 2 options. Do I buy more faction cards, hopefully buying low and then spending them at high cost so you gain the spoils? Or am I going to use those actions? All the factions have, the deck is the same, so all the cards of that faction match, and they all have, each faction has a different action on those cards, so you'll need to see what those things might be. So some of them are gaining cards from other players that they reveal from their hand, and they'll show you a card and then you'll gain some money or gain cards from the bank, or it may be moving a tile somewhere on the board. So there's lots of different actions that can happen. Those the faction bases are also different shaped, so that may also determine where they come out on the board or how soon they come out based on their shape.
After a faction is lost, you can put it back into the game by simply building that faction pattern. When you do, you'll get a free kind of start card from their race in order to add to your hand. And then in the game, the decision making in the game is choosing between how many cards do I spend to help this faction win its battle and take over and become valuable at the end of the game, versus how many do I try to keep in my hand because that's how I'm going to actually get the points at the end of the game.
Yes, there's also those rift tiles that are out on the board. They have their one-time use. So there's a little player aid that tells you what all the different things are. Some of them are pretty powerful, but if you don't spend them, they are worth 3 points in the game. And that is really the only other way to gain points, is by the value of the card based on how far and how many the strength points of the factions, and then those rift tiles at the end.
So when you get to the end of the game, you will basically count out the cards that you have collected over the course of the game, multiply them by the value, by the location they have on the track, and then whoever has the most valuable, most high-based cards is probably going to walk away as your champion.
Yeah, if this sounds like something you're interested in, you can check out Dawn of Ulos from Thunderworks Games, a continuation of their role-player universe. And then as always, thank you so much for checking out our videos here and subscribing to our channel here at Tantrum House.